I can really relate to not so much your story as far as the way that you had fear even before you came onto the planet, but growing up in a family of alcoholism, sexual abuse, we shape, at least my understanding is that I shaped my picture of myself from what I was collecting from the external, from what people would say or do or behaviors of other people. And I began to see myself through those lenses. And through this journey, being able to unpack a lot of that and recognize that we really all are just a collection of our experiences, and the way we see things are based on our past, and being able to stay in the moment and see something as brand new without relating it to some past experience or some past event or something like that, and to just recognize this is a brand new moment, and rather than project our past onto it and rob us of the joy that's in this moment, that we can see it differently, and it also helps me to stay out of judgment when I recognize that people behave in manners that and this in alignment with what they think about themselves, and it's that healing that's needed. And when you can see that, you can extend some grace, and know that we're all on this journey together. And I see it in myself that I have, I've collected a lot of information. A lot of it has been wrong. But as a kid, how do you know? We're sponges. I said it's like we come to this planet as a sponge with amnesia, at the same time. We're collecting information. We've forgotten where we came from. We've forgotten our source, and we're just believing everything we're hearing. Informing our own opinions of ourselves and the world around us, until one day, by God's grace, somehow, the light shines in, and you can reevaluate, and you can stop, and you can question. And that's a good thing. I found that to be a really good thing. I was told that it wasn't something that was allowed growing up. I'm the authority. And so we live with these ideas that are diametrically opposed to what we know in our soul to be the truth. And you wonder why we're depressed or anxious. I'm trying to hold on to something I'm told is the way I'm supposed to see this thing, but it doesn't agree with what's inside. It took me decades to get through that. I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. The avalanche of the ancestors and the fearful decisions that were made to survive migrations and depressions and life, and the interior voice of harsh self-judgment that's passed down through generations. And we now know that, yes, we get it culturally from parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and friends in our culture, but we now also know the epigenetics include some of these messages of fear, of perfectionism, of less than. So it's absolutely a pain travels through families until someone has the courage to feel it, process it, and change it in an alchemy kind of way. And then they are the generation breaker. Then the generations beneath them can be different.
That's beautiful and so true. I was reading recently where someone was driving behind a vehicle where they had just taken, like, say, a whole McDonald's bag of food and just threw it out the window. And the thoughts that come when you see someone do something like that, how idiotic, and all kinds of things that you think. And this individual was saying, but do you understand the family perhaps that they grew into, the examples that they have seen? And unless you know what they have experienced in their life, and not just in their life, but as you've stated, generationally, it has gone on. That kind of thinking and those experiences have gone on for generations. It just helps you to see a little differently.
We have compassion. We don't know what that person's going through. We don't know how they've arrived here today.
Mm-hmm. It is true. You know, and I mentioned it already, but just believing, and some of the things that I'm learning now, I would probably be viewed by my old days church friends as a heretic, for sure. But just understanding that, I spent decades believing that I was born into sin, as I shared with you at dinner, that I was evil, and that was just my condition, and that I could receive God's love, but it was based on behavior, that whole mentality. That's what I grew up with. I grew up with the works mentality. As long as I was doing the right thing, God was on my side. When I failed, it was just my obvious nature at work that, I was evil. And understanding today that we come into this planet innocent. We are innocent. And we have never been disconnected from our source. How could we be? And yet that was mind-blowing to me when that finally dawned on this Marblehead. We have never been disconnected from our Creator. And I think I shared in my first episode, it's like if I was a painter and I painted you this beautiful painting, Brian, even though I gave it to you, it would never be separate from me because it came from me.
Beautiful.
And we came from our Creator, from God. And, I know that it's been said that the most difficult time people have of reaching God is the concept God or the word God. So can you talk a little bit about what that means to you, like how we assign meaning to words and how that creates blocks for us to being able to see things clearly or see things as they really are?
Absolutely, absolutely. And to respond a little bit with we were created in goodness. John Claypool, the great theologian, played a large role in my life. And his benediction that I love so much has in it, we were born in the goodness of God, we were born. And I love that was the first part of his benediction. In the goodness of God, we were born. So when we think about the words, it's very powerful, the words. And as I was talking to you earlier, part of my studies are the Celtic studies. The Celtic studies are 7,000 years old. And part of the Celtic studies they talk about 7,000 years ago when God was a woman. And the Celtic offer that, and they feel that. And they're very connected to nature and the trees and the streams and the sun and the moon. And I'm very blessed being a Bronx kid and a New York City area kid and a Los Angeles kid. I'm very blessed with a lot of Jewish community. I'm very blessed, very grateful. And as you know, there's a large part of that community, and it's G symbol D. They don't say the word God. They don't print the word God. It's so holy, there's no word for it. And I've always found that wonderful. It reminds me of Carl Jung with the old Stoic quote from Erasmus, the advocat con advocatus, called or not called, the divine mystery will be. The divine mystery. And words, in our relationship to words, they have a lot to do with what was happening when we heard them in our lives. And words, I can remember as a very young person reading in a book that was in the rack in the church, if you perform this service for 1 year on every first Friday, you will get 300 years off in purgatory. And I remember reading that. And I said to myself, that's pretty powerful. The relationship to words and our ability to connect, so much of what I do is allowing people to be open to the possibility of being open to the possibility of being open to the possibility that there is something that you could connect to and that you're worthy to connect. And it's okay to reach out and try to connect. And I love the different phrases and the different ideas. Spirit of the universe, intelligent mind. I love all the different ideas.
I think that saved me when I came into the AA program, because when I first came in, I had some major chips on my shoulder. And I had pastored a church for a number of years, and I was in the process of unlearning a lot of things that just were not true, going back to those things that I held on to that were diametrically opposed to the truth that was in me. And coming in there and finding out that I could find a God of my own understanding. To me, that fell in line with the whole heretic thing. I would have said that was blasphemy years ago. And yet, and I've had sponsees do this, where you write down, what would this God, call it whatever you want, but what would this entity look like, or this frequency, or whatever you want to call it? What would it look like? And everything that's written down is, kind, gracious, loving, forgiving, non-judgmental. I mean, you see it over and over again. And where is that coming from? It's coming from in here. And where does this being exist, the kingdom of God in me? It's coming from within me. And yet we deny ourselves that truth and listen to all this other stuff. It really does take opening up your mind to believe there's a different way of seeing things if you'll allow yourself to do that.